Hey everyone. Please support what I do to help keep Greyhawk alive by subscribing to the channel. Also, please consider becoming a channel member to get early access to videos, exclusive live chats, quarterly adventure modules, and more. Thanks, and enjoy the show. So, I noticed that it's time to do another read-through of the Guide to the World of Greyhawk, so that's what we're going to do today on Greyhawk Ragnar. Alright, so we left off at one of the most pivotal lands in the entire guide. Ayuz. Here we go. Ayuz, land of. This is obviously one of the most important kingdoms in the world of Greyhawk, in the Flyness. It is home to Ayuz, the evil, the old one. He's a Cambion, half demon, half human, son of Igwilv, the Witch Queen. They even later on in the from the Ashes era. They did an entire source book based on the lands of Ayuz, so it's very pivotal. But what we get here is the glimpse of what Ayuz was originally in Greyhawk, in Gary's conception. And I think it's really illustrative to read some of these things. Um, old Ayuz of Fear Babe talk may be human or may once have been human, but this is not known for certain one way or the other. Um, and that tells us something right off the bat is that he's already, even he's still around, still a very potent threat, but he has already passed into folklore. He's already passed into legend. Fear Babe talk, like if you don't behave, or old Ayuz is going to get you. So you get that very clear sense that Ayuz casts a long shadow over the Flyness, even now, even in 576. Um, and it also talks about, and just so you're aware, this is what we're talking about, right up here, Ayuz, north of the kingdom of Furiondi and Valuna and so forth. Um, And originally, that whole stretch of land from the near dive up to Ayuz was this collection of little tiny states, just like we see in the Bandit Kingdoms in 576. It's just these little, it would be a couple of hexes on the map, and there's dozens of them all stretched out through there. And starting in, well, it doesn't say the year here, but it's starting about, let's say here. Uh, yeah, gripping YouTube, me flipping through pages. Um, the might of Ayuz grows about 100 years ago, 479. So what happens is, it gives a little outline of where the things, where his boundaries are. For many decades, the evil of the place was in relative quietude for lack of evil direction, and the neighbors of good folk prospered. Ayuz had been trapped by the mirthful and mad Zagyig, locked away in a strange chamber deep below the ruins of Castle Greyhawk, one of 9 powerful demigods so confined. Prisoners were loosed in 570, so 6 years before present date of the book. And once again, Ayuz rules, and forces gather for fell purpose. Um, Ayuz has vowed to bring ruin upon Tensor the Archmage and Lord Robilar and the others who tried to slay him when his prison was sprung. Um, in addition to the many evil clerics, thieves, fighters, assassins, and magic users who have gathered under the grim banner, the numbers of the foulest tribes of humanoids have grown in strength and are ready to march. Goblins, orcs, and hobgoblins in thousands are known to be in arms, swelling the human contingents of Ayuz's armies. So here we have a very clear picture, very evocative. It's only a paragraph long, but we have this picture of this swelling malevolent force in the north, just ready to burst off onto the scene, but it hasn't quite happened yet. And that's one of the genius things about this era of uh, of Greyhawk is that it's in balance. There's a tension, and it could go either way. It could evil could rise ascendant, or good could thwart the evil and itself become ascendant. So you get this very real feeling that something is about to happen. And of course, it does later on in the campaign, but it's just really evocative in this one thing. It's also interesting to note that around the before this was even published, actually, uh, yeah, they Minifigs had done a line of World of Greyhawk miniature figures, and one of them was Ayu's evil demigod Ayu's and evil halflings. So it's a really weird thing. I don't happen to have one, but I've pictures up on the blog. If you go to free resources, there's a whole thing of the minifigs line. Um, and there's this it's this collection of evil halflings who are his minions, which is really really weird because we never hear about it again. When they don't show up in I Use the Evil, they don't show up in the novels, nothing. It's just kind of there. And it's just like maybe it was just an idea that Gary had had, or maybe it was in the original campaign. I'm not really sure, but it's a fascinating little thing. So anyway, that is what we got for the land of IUs. It's a very evocative and very critical part of the FLNAS. Next up, we have Keoland, and I'm not going to dwell on Keoland a lot because I just did a video about it a couple weeks ago. So check it out. Um, it's basically there's very little detail beyond what's in here. This is pretty much all you get outside of a few adventures on the periphery that don't really talk about Keoland itself. And I will direct you to that other video, but it is important to note that they do uh, paint a portrait here of Kaoland as a good realm that went through a period of imperialism, of conquest of its neighbors and so forth, and that was eventually stopped, and they reverted back to being good, but it left all of these neighboring kingdoms that used to be part of Kaoland are now independent realms, and that's one of the more significant parts of that part of the Floness. But like I say, outside of a couple published adventures, Saltmarsh obviously is the big one, and that's really um, I hesitate to even say it's part of Kaoland. I mean, it is technically, but because it's cut off by the big swamp and stuff, it's very, very much on the periphery, and you don't really get a feeling for what the kingdom is like from those modules. Um, they do say that the fleet is battle worthy but small, and conflict with the sea princes continues to plague the realm. So we still get that idea that this is a living place. Things are still happening. There's battles happening on the water. There's kingdoms change their ways. They're not eternally exactly the same. And I like that kind of dynamism that you get from just a few sentences in the. Now, next up we have Ket. Ket is not quite on the map. It's just off to the west there. On my map, it's on the real map. And Ket is a very interesting thing because the way it's portrayed here, um, it is halfway between the Floness and the Backloonish lands. The Backloonish lands are very obviously a pastiche of uh, Arab, Persian, Muslim lands. Obviously, they're not the religion doesn't carry over, but the culturally that's what you get from them. And is halfway between them because it is the border. It forms the border between the eastern states and the Bacloonish states. And you even get that is the frontier state of the Bacloonish and a trading center between Eastern Floness and the world beyond. Um, for many decades, it has alternatively menaced the Oridian Sulois states east and south and threatened them with invasion. Despite this continual warfare, the land flourished due to rich trade with the Paynim tribes, Tusmet, Ekbir, Paranland, Basel, and Valuna. Um, and that is the critical thing here, is that it is half of one and half of the other. Politically, it's aligned with the Bacloonish states, but culturally, there's a lot of Iridian and other Floness influence here. We see that in the weapons and the armies and so forth. Um, Hittites field a strong force of pikes and crossbows, which you don't really see in the other Bacloonish lands. And pikes are very obviously associated with Paranland, which is to the north of it. So you get this real feeling that it is half, midway between. Um, and there's some of the other states that we've already covered, like Bissell and Valuna and the Grand Marsh and so forth. Um, they do mention this continual tension, continual raiding and warfare between them and Ket. And you get the impression that if they could ever if all the Backloonish lands ever actually combined their forces and truly became unified again, like they were back before the twin cataclysms, then the Flyness could really be under threat. Um, but there's always these internal squabbles and everything. But the idea of Ket as that cultural crossroads really makes a mark here. Yeah. So it's one of those things. We see it mentioned in I believe it was Sea of Death in Gary's novel, where that's where Gord starts off in Ket because he can kind of pass in between because he's because of its halfway nature. So, but it's definitely an important thing culturally and historically. And if you were going into the wargaming side, like I've been wanting to do, it gives a lot of options for that, for that kind of stuff. So, definitely, it would be worth going to. I wouldn't really I mean, there's not really any mention of dungeons or stuff like that, but there's definitely room for adventure in terms of like I could see that a lot of political intrigue, a lot of mercantile intrigue and so forth could happen in Ket. So it's definitely worth considering. And last one for today, we're going to talk about the Lordship of the Isles Principality. It's a member of the Iron League, which means it's allied with these other states down here. This is the Lordship of the Isles over here, and you can see it has a very commanding and strategic location. It controls that Tilva Strait there. So any kind of sea travel between the easternmost Flyness and the center or west has to go past the Lordship of the Isles. So it's definitely a strategic location. Um, the islands are rich and fertile and enjoy the benefits of their strategic location. Um, uh, the rulers of Duxchan gave up piracy in favor of more lucrative methods of extracting money from merchants. There is particular enmity between the Sea Barons and the Lord of the Isles for obvious reasons, because they're both, they both compete for being the major sea power on the eastern coast of Flyness. The Duxchanners are still smarting from the Battle of Medegia, which happened in 572, which is again 4 years before present day, where the Sea Barons sank 4 of their warships and made prizes of 3 loaded cogs before they could gain safety in Pondalur. Um, it's and again, that gives you another snippet of, things are happening. Events happened only 4 years ago that still have an impact. There's battles going on. It's not a static locale. It's not a static setting. And I think those kinds of snippets of activity and you know the world moves without the PCs having to be there. I love that idea, and you get that in little snippets like that. And you get that, across the whole board for the whole Flyness. And this also sets up stuff that happens later on in the Greyhawk Wars and in the Greyhawk World of Greyhawk news articles that Gary wrote in the early '80s. So it all feeds together. It's a lot of coherence, and you get the impression of a living, breathing world through that kind of stuff. So anyway, there we go for today. Hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know what you think of the comments, and I will talk.
Thanks for watching today's video. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Below you'll find links to my Patreon, which helps make these videos possible. You'll also find the web store where you can buy my books, and my blog where you'll find all sorts of free downloads and other articles. Thanks, and have a great day.